prayer. Lord, we worship you and we're very grateful to be a member of your family. And we don't know how all these things work, and it's just way beyond us. But we simply believe what you have written in your word. And we're very grateful for the opportunity, Lord. It's an invitation, but it is also a warning that you are the only place where there is safety and comfort and peace for eternity. So we are thank you for that. We praise you for that. We love your son. Everybody here says we love your son, and we worship him in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, now, so the title here, Walking Heavily and Carrying a Big Stick. Now, this is the opposite of Theodore Roosevelt, who said, walk softly and carry a big stick. It kind of reminds me of Reagan, where he said, trust but verify. And to be frank, are we in an era of trust? No. Don't trust and verify. You know, that's kind of the era we're in. You can't trust anybody. Even we have Christians, I have so many conversations, and what do you believe? What can you believe? You open up the newspaper, something's there. I have to find 4, 5, 6 sources to make sure it's true. You know, even our lovely friends who help us, Amir Safadi and some others, you know, they post some things, and every once in a while they catch themselves. So I'm very leery of things being posted, and you know, what's the truth about this, and then does it have any bearing? And you know, we need to just go through those things. So we're not back in 1929, 35, 45. We are in 2025, and we're in an era where we have a president who is not walking softly. And so very good conversation with a beloved leader in a church, and loves the Lord and is very cautious for the church, and I love him for that. And I want to be too. And that's why, Jesus said watch, and he has a watchman at the door, and the sheep, watching for the sheep and stuff. But there's some who are very, very, very concerned about the situation that we're in with a president who is walking as heavily. And we cannot deny this. He is walking heavily. And my question would be, how should a man in his position today, in this era, walk? When do we have $1 trillion in fraud and waste and abuse? Have we had 20 million illegal immigrants? And they are illegal, that's the key word. They're not all murderers and all that kind of stuff. But the cord's stacking up, isn't it? The cordwood is stacking up. And you go, who do you blame those on? Who do you start focusing on? So I'm just going to simply say this. The President of the United States, he swore to the Constitution to protect and to serve this nation. We did not hire a pastor. That's evident. He is not what we would consider a righteous man. The way we would like to see that. He has a past. I'm going to leave that between him and God. I am going to demand of him, as the president, that he carries out the will of the people. Now, so this is a Sunday night update. I'm a preacher. I'm a Bible preacher. This is what I do. I was in the Air Force, so I can't, just leave all that behind me. But I'm a preacher, and so I'm supposed to be preaching the good news and the gospel and those kinds of things. And when we think of the gospel, which means good news, and Paul calls it the gospel, the good news, he also talks about, in the book of Corinthians, about the judgment and the sins and the problems of the earth and the judgment of Jesus Christ will come according to his gospel. So that's the part we would rather not talk about. But look, there's no good news without bad. There's just news. I talked this morning in the sermon. Why did God put the tree in the garden? It would have been good news for eternity without the tree. And the little serpent guy, he's walking around talking to Eve, what's he doing? Without those two in the garden, bliss, no bad news, no good news, just news. But we have a problem. We are sinners. We all were headed to hell. We all were enemies with God. And there are still most of us who are. Not most of us in the church, most of the world, most of the sons and daughters of men are enemies of God. That's the bad news. So what are you going to do about it? What's God going to do about it? He brought this man about. Like him or not, he brought this man about. Now, Purim took place this last week. And you remember Purim? Was it a good time? I'm not talking about the feast. The feast is a good time. This is the closest thing to Halloween they get. Do you know that they dress up? They dress up as their heroes, whether it's, the king or Esther, or I hope the guys aren't dressing up as Esther. You got all these kinds of things. Then you got Mordecai, who's a good guy. He's a really good guy in that story. He kind of gets left behind. It's not all about Esther. She needed him and he needed her. For a time such as this, Mordecai told her, they're both there for a time such as this. And then you got Haman, the Agagite, the bad guy. Remember, Saul was supposed to kill all the Agagites. King Agag and all them. They were supposed to die, but he didn't. And so this guy got through and he tried to kill the Jews. So it continues. So it's a fun little thing, and they dress up and they give candy and cookies. They make little cookies, special little cookies for this, and they dress up and have fun. But it's not a biblical feast, okay? But they do it because it was a time of horrible time. And yet they say, we're celebrating the victory over it. And how? In Daniel 2:21, he changes the times and the seasons. He removes the kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. And by the way, Daniel will go on later in chapter 11 and 12 and many other places where if you seek understanding, you'll find it. James talks about it. The wise will understand because the wise want to understand, remember? We are wise and understand and have faith. We're wise and we understand because we have faith. We don't go looking for faith. You already have it. I'm talking to people right now who are looking in the Bible to kind of try to have faith. Where's the truth so I can have faith? That's not how it works. I have faith in Jesus Christ. The faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God. It comes to you, you believe, you go looking, and to be wise and understand. Because you are wise and understand Jesus, you have his righteousness, go looking, okay? And so in Proverbs 8:15-16, by me kings reign and rulers enact just laws. Just laws was supposed to be the issue. By me princes rule and all nobles who govern justly. Job 12:23, he makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations, then disperses them. You know that America is running on 250 years plus or 400 years, depending on how you look at it. When the Pilgrims showed up, the average length of a nation is 400 years. The Pilgrims showed up just over 400 years ago. Psalm 75, for exaltation comes neither from the east nor the west, nor out of the desert, but it is from God who judges. He brings down one and exalts another. And so in Luke 21:29, he told them a parable. Look at the fig trees and all the trees. I did some work on this. I should bring it back just for this little group. Just for tonight, Sunday night, just a little thing that shows you where the nation started. They started in Eden, right? They started in Eden, and then they go out, and it goes to Africa, and it goes to Yemen, and it goes to China, and very rapidly to China. The populations go. And then it more slowly, but emphatically, goes west. And where's the last nation, the really big last nation to grow up and be birthed? United States of America. What other tree is growing now? None. So I consider, because the Old Testament talks about trees being of nations, Lebanon, cedar, all those kinds of things. I'll lop off the top of the cedar. So if you look at the fig tree, that's always Israel. And all the trees, boom, all the nations are bloomed. We're at the end. The leaves start falling. As soon as they come out in leaf, and you see for yourselves and know that summer is already near, what happens in summer? Heat, and the leaves start to die, and toward fall they're gone, of course. So also when you see all these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all has taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Now somebody, and I'm just going to do a little caveat here. Some people will want to ask me, well, do I think this is the generation that will not pass away? But when we say that, we're talking about 70 or 80 years as a generation, according to Psalm, according to David. And so how long has Israel been a nation? Over 70. But again, I want to state this. They did not have Jerusalem in 1948. And they are not a nation without Jerusalem. They got Jerusalem when? 1967. So start counting from there. Just say 2530. 2030. 2530. Isn't there a song? In the year 20. Yeah, I got some gray hair bopping back there. We're not waiting that long. 2030, around 2030, and it's some very interesting things are converging. This season coming up, 2030, 2035, some very interesting things, but that we'll continue to watch together. But anyway, having said that, this generation may be the generation that's in when Jerusalem comes back as the capital. So we'll take up a little bit of that as we get on here. I don't know if you watched this and saw this last week. You got a 6.2 earthquake in Alaska and a 6.2 in Panama. They happened almost simultaneously, within an hour. That's why they're red. And I'm just going to point it out every once in a while because I see it and then you get to see it. It's that simple. And I like watching. Jesus said one of the first things to watch for in watching the summertime coming is the earthquakes and the famines and wars and rumors of wars. Those three things. And then he said specifically, the end is not yet. Okay? So I take that as we will begin to see these things more and more. All right? But the equilibrium of the magma displacement is phenomenal to me. And you get a 6.2 thousands of miles away, many thousands of miles away. And you get one in Central America there. And at the same time, that's not happenstance. And all that pressure is coming down over the ridge, but that whole plate is the Pacific plate. Well, there's several plates there really, but the big one is, of course, the Pacific plate. And you don't see any volcano or earthquake activity in Hawaii there. That little tiny speck there, that white speck, is Hawaii. And really no activity there this last week, but the week before there was quite a bit. So it's just interesting, very interesting for me to watch. This is interesting to watch. Anybody want to wrestle that thing? They have come a long way in just a few years. And this is concerning now. We've been talking about the AI chips that they've been putting in people, is the whole idea of about kind of being really biotechnology and the things that are happening all across the board. You can have an army of robots, you can have an army of human or biotech slaves. They'll do your bidding. All you got to do is feed them a little bit, help them. Maybe they can play games to keep them, you know. But it's just a phenomenal age that we are coming into. And I don't know who you call the best people of the planet. I think it's still the church myself, because we are the pillar of truth. That's what Acts says. That's what Paul calls us. We are the pillar of truth. So I think we're the best organism on the planet. However, when it comes to biotechnology and the brains that go along with that kind of stuff and robots, these people want to help. They want to stay ahead of the bad guy on security. They want to stay ahead of the bad guy on banking and your money. They want to secure your money. They want to help you with your health. They think that if I can get this person who's been paralyzed, if I put a chip in their brain, they can move their arm or leg, whatever. So it's all about helping or security, and in that state, people are doing things that we would rather them not do. And would we really honestly rather see people come into our country, even if they were simply illegal aliens? We don't want that because it's illegal. But if they did, they've been doing that for a long time. But if they come in here, make a home for their family, and then we get to preach to them, and those kinds of things is one thing. But when we start breaking down as a country because of it, the church may not take action, but it's the president's job to take action. That's his job. And he should be fired if he doesn't. And in fact, the nation did fire Joe Biden because of it. And so these leaders and these people are coming to help and fix problems, and yet at the same time, they are stirring up the planet. They're walking heavily, and they're carrying a big stick, and it scares many of us. I'm not happy with the situation. We wish that we didn't have to do this, but here we are. Paterson, New Jersey, we've touched on this place. This is called the Palestine of the United States. The Palestinian capital of the United States has been called. It's the Mecca of New Jersey. Now they got the cops, city cops, wearing the Palestinian flag in our nation. This should be illegal. This should not be happening. We have enough problems with this in the nation, and so this mayor needs to be fired. The police chief needs to be fired, and this stuff needs to be changed. This is outside the White House. This is in 2016, outside the White House. This is in 2025 outside the White House. And he can cry to his God all he wants, but it's a difficult. I was going to show a video. It took place a few years ago. It was with the Heritage Institute, and a young Muslim lady stood up in the back. They had a forum up front, and she wanted to ask a question, and she was polite about it, but she said, "You have 1.8 billion Muslims." At the time, that's what she said. But then the expert, watch, I'll tell you that in a second. And she says, and it's an ideology, and how are you going to combat an ideology? What should we be doing to incorporate them is what she's kind of saying. And a lady up front, who was an expert on Islam, said, "We have 1.26 billion Muslims. Let me tell you how many of them are jihadists." And she said at the time there were about 360 million. The size of the United States, 360 conservative Muslims, jihadists basically in ideology. And that is very difficult. That's very problematic. So here's something else that Trump did. If this isn't walking heavily, I don't know what is, but he revokes the security clearances of Harris. She just stepped out of office, so there's probably no need right now for her to have one. I don't know. I think they're granted a 6-month period, but he took that away from her. Hillary Clinton still had hers. That makes no sense. And he revoked hers, and he revokes Biden's. Biden's was supposed to be for 6 months. But I think Biden is in a difficult situation, and so for the good of the country, I think he revoked them. Now again, see, people are going to say, well, he didn't need to do that. That was mean. Yep, he was walking heavily. That's who this president is. And we need to deal with this situation as this president is. God appointed him as not the king, but he is our leader, and we can have him or Harris. We can take our pick. Now, Trump is not a godly man in my view. I don't think, with what I know of him, he knows God personally. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. He's got a spiritual guide she's a spiritual loon. I'm being nice. Paula White is a spiritual loon, and that he appointed her as one of his members there to head this agency, a religious agency. She is not right biblically. So we need to be real careful about looking at this man as whether he's going to be our savior or even a godly man. However, is he going to be a good president? And so far, so good. He's walking pretty heavy though. Trump undoes Biden's abortion legacy. The Navy will no longer pay for sailors' abortions. Okay? So to the church, that better be a good thing. Because under no circumstances should the public pay for that. Fannie Willis is ordered to pay $54,000 for violating records laws in Trump case. Justice is being done. Trump cleaves the student loan and special education services from the education department. And in fact, he wrote an executive order for it to be wound down. And now that's all over the news. I really don't have to talk about that except to say this. Bennett was on Mark Levin, and some other people were talking to him. And he was the education department leader there back in the Reagan era for a while. And he's saying, the education department was supposed to be a good thing, and in general, it was sort of a good thing, but then it just got bloated and crazy and not usable. And most good presidents, Ronald Reagan wanted it gone, so it's been hanging around for that long. And again, if you like Ronald Reagan, and who doesn't like Ronald Reagan, right? He was an actor. He was funny. You ever listen to his show? Anyway, he was a good president, and he wanted it gone. The USA.gov, the Federation Mediation and Conciliation Service is gone. Now, there's many of these that are gone, but I just wanted to point this one out. This is, what do you do here? Let's see, it's a bunch of lawyers. They live in a 10-story, they basically live there. They work out of a 10-story plex. It's wonderful. They got everything. They're living high on the hog. And they just mediate. One of the 7 small federal agencies that the President Donald Trump ordered downsized or eliminated on Friday was rife with corruption, with its employees hiring friends and relatives, commissioning paintings of themselves, and using government credit cards to indulge in constant luxuries. The FMCSC occupied a 9-story office tower in DC, 60 employees, but with others added on, so there's at least 100 of them. Its managers had luxury suites, full bathrooms, showers, the whole kit and caboodle. This one says 230, but I think there's, it's 230 employees that exist to serve as a voluntary mediator. A voluntary mediator in our government, paid for by you, by the way. This reporter spent a year investigating the agency a decade ago, and I found egregious and self-serving violations of hiring, pay, contracting, and purchasing, and all that stuff. FFMCS seemed quite clearly to exist for the benefit of those on its payroll and not much else. One employee told me, let me give you the honest truth. A lot of them FMCS employees don't do a blank of a lot, including myself. Personally, the reason I've stayed is that I just don't feel like working that hard. Plus, the location on K Street is great. Plus, we all have these oversized offices with windows. Plus, management doesn't seem to care if we stay out at lunch a long time. Can you blame me? And isn't that interesting that somebody will say, can you blame me? That is where we are at in America with many people. Can you blame me not to stay on this gravy train? Now, I wish I had time to take you through the circle, the evolution of a nation, where you start out and you're basically destitute, you're tired of the tyrant over you, and then you say, let's revolt. So you revolt, and you start getting some victory, and then you start gaining some land, and you start getting some some good leaders, and then you start getting some wealth, and you start building your houses and having families, and then you start getting wealthy, and then you start not caring, and then you're back to square one. And we're toward the end of a national cycle, if you will. That's what this looks like when people start talking and acting this way. They've got $55 million for 200 employees. That comes out to $275,000 per employee. I don't know what they get paid. I'm sure they use that money to do other things, but anyway, it's a disaster. Just one small, $55 million. I'm thinking that's a lot of money. Small agency, but that's just a picture of what Doge and others are running into now. Hunter Biden has had Secret Service protection for an extended period of time. No longer. No Secret Service for Donald Trump. For Biden. F-47. Did you see? The president announced this when he had a meeting with Secretary Hegseth the other day. We don't really know what it looks like. We don't even know what it does. Except I do know, we got a hint of this. When it says it's going to be flying with drones, that means it's going to be controlling them. That means you've got a jet up in the air, and you've got tens or hundreds or even thousands of drones, depending on how many they can control and They call that a span of control. It's going to be very interesting to see what this jet will do, but nobody else has it in the world. People are already, other nations are already asking for it, so. I don't know if this is good yet. We're going to have to wait and see. This is McGregor. He's conservative. This is in Ireland. He's tired of the immigration thing over there. Trump, it looks like Trump has encouraged him to run for president, and it looks like he's taken it on. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to be concerned about, well, I am concerned about his belief in Jesus Christ, of course, but this is, I guess the point here is, here's another right-moving character, nation, population. Pastor Mason mentioned this the other day in our office. He said, many nations, we're talking about, there's a backlash in Canada right now. There's a backlash in the UK right now. There's a backlash in Germany. They just had their coalition go right wing. Italy went right. Germany, some of these others. So there's I know I mentioned Germany twice. So anyway, there's a huge move. This listen, we say, well, this is good because it's going to crack down on immigration. It's going to help with trade and all these kinds of things. Those things are good. They have been good. But listen, they also have this idea of, well, it takes war to do this, so that comes with it many times. And many of these people and things, I'm not saying he is, but many of these nations are anti-Semitic. And their leaders, some of their leaders are. And so we just need to be very careful what we're praying for and asking for. God knows. So this prime minister came out. He stepped in Trudeau's, Carney is his name, in Canada, stepped in Trudeau's shoes as an interim. And he's telling Trump to, he doesn't want anything to do with Trump's tariffs and all this other stuff. He's kind of laughing in Trump's face. But he's called for an election. And so we're going to see where Canada goes. It'll be an interesting thing where Canada goes. The president of Mexico has been kind of squished underneath this big heavy stick of Trump concerning sanctions and stuff. But she stands up the other day and she recognizes the state of Palestine. And so do you think God's going to bless that nation? I think there's a problem there. Germany plans to send $300 million to Syria. Why? Again, I know I've talked about this probably for the last 3 or 4 Sundays in a row. I've said something like this. And you go, I hear that dead horse being beaten again. Yeah. But the point is being made here that nations want to see Syria grow. They want to see their people come back, build their houses, have families, build restaurants and all those kinds of things. And they want to see it so bad that they're willing to let a jihadist in a suit bring all the sanctions down on this guy, let him do what he's going to do while he's murdering Alawites and Christians. And it's not him personally, but his people are on a murder spree right now in Syria and portions of Lebanon right now. And they've got their eyes on Israel. Do not doubt yourself. That doesn't take a rocket scientist. If you're reading your Bible, you know everything comes out of the north. And Syria is directly north. And Isaiah 7 and 8, Syria is involved. The U.S. State Department, the South Africa's ambassador, must leave the U.S. Why? They're anti-Semitic. They've stood up against Israel. They've taken them to the ICC courts and all this stuff. And so the Trump administration is coming down on South Africa. By the way, South Africa, I don't know if you know this is happening, but they had a lovely woman on a video the other day. I don't want to talk about what happened to her. And then they murdered her husband. Bunch of men murdered her husband right in front of her in her house. It's a race war. And it's a horrible, horrible place for some people right now. So very, very difficult. Speaking of Africa, the Tigray War, a conflict between Ethiopian government forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front and its associated humanitarian crisis, resulted in an estimated death toll of between, and they don't really know the numbers. They buried, there's so many mass graves, anywhere from 200 to 600,000 people. And that is about ready to ramp up again, okay? And so it's a very, very sad situation there. Sudan is the same. Horrible things in Sudan, horrible things in Nigeria. Chad is not a good place to be. Africa is very, very problematic. Azerbaijan, we keep track of some of these nations. Now, Azerbaijan has become a friend of Israel. Azerbaijanis have a Persian, we call them Persians. They have a Persian community, and that's in the south. And so Iran says, well, actually much of Azerbaijan south is ours. So Azerbaijan and Iran don't really get along too well. And so that helps Israel and Azerbaijan get along real well. And Azerbaijan is on the Caspian Sea, and there's a lot of oil there. So Russia has kind of, hey, we want to be your friends too, them. But anyway, Azerbaijan will sign an agreement today to explore natural gas in Israeli waters. So a consortium will receive exploration rights for offshore block of Israel. SOCAR acquired 10% of a stake in Israel's Tamar field, one of the largest gas fields off of Israel's coast. Israel was Azerbaijan's 6th largest oil buyer, not gas, oil buyer in 2023, importing $713 million worth of oil. And this just exacerbates the problem between Israel and Iran, even Israel and Russia, and I would say Israel and Turkey too. Turkey and Azerbaijan are supposed to be friends, but this does not help. Turkey thinks Israel is, stepping in their backyard, and they don't like it. Turkey doesn't like Israel anyway. Teapot refineries. What is a teapot refinery? It's a privately owned Chinese oil company, and many of them have sprouted up. I'll show you a map here. They are the largest purchasers of Iranian oil, providing the Islamic Republic its primary economic base. So here's the U.S. targets China teapot oil refineries. So, in other words, here's the big stick, the U.S. big stick coming down on China's oil in a huge way. It is the largest importer of oil for China, these teapots consolidated, so that they can refine it into gas for Chinese. How do you think this is going to go over in China? Not very well at all. They've already talking about these companies, many of these companies shutting down. I had a map. There it is. And I want to show you where they're at. In general, there's one inland, but look where most of them are. Now, this is interesting. They're over there near the coast. Where are 2/3 or more of the Chinese population? Near the coast. The oil refineries near the coast. The ports are always near the coast. You know how that works? Ports are near the coast. So if you have China next to the coast, and you have Japan as an island, and the Philippines as an island, a bunch of islands, Taiwan is an island, and some other islands, and then you have the islands called the USS Ford or the USS Truman, which are basically islands with 70 to 90 aircraft on them, and a whole bunch of battleships and cruisers and stuff with cruise missiles, My point is that in a war, if they took out the coast, China would be over. And so them going to war with the United States is not a good thing if the United States engages correctly. They can engage China in a major, major way. I'm not saying that we should do that. That's not what I'm getting at. My point is that they are very, very vulnerable. Their economy is vulnerable. Their demographics, they're aging they're getting very old. Their military is mostly diesel ships, close. They can't travel around the world. So they are vulnerable if they were the only nation attacking us, and if the President of the United States did it right. And I believe the current one would, but hopefully we don't go there. Anyway, this is a huge deal. I think Xi's coming to visit Trump here soon. And Xi, I think, is going to have to give a little. Trump is very concerned about the tech agency, about the military agency, he's somewhat concerned about Taiwan. He's not hugely concerned about Taiwan. I'm being frank with you. He is concerned about the Japanese and South Korea and some other things. He is concerned about the nukes. But anyway, that's the point. Now, here's one of the protests in Turkey. Look how massive this is. Erdogan is under pressure right now because he put another opposition member in prison. And they come up with these charges. Putin does the same. They do it the same in Iran. They do it in all these countries led by tyrants. They just throw the opposition. Look how many people are there. And this is happening all over Turkey right now. Mass arrests have started in the last couple days. And we're just going to have to see how this plays. Now, I would say biblically, we sort of already know how this plays out, don't we? Turkey, we know, is one that comes down in Ezekiel 38 as a massive army. So we can't get our hopes too far up. We wish there would be a change, but they are not leaving Islam anytime soon. Now, Peter Zion, see his name. This guy's, Joe and I follow this guy pretty close. He's a pretty good analyst. He's not a very good procrastinator. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Prognosticate. That's the word. Prognosticator. You know, what isn't that one of the movies they called the groundhog, the great prognosticator, right? Okay, finally found it. He's not a very good prognosticator. He doesn't really have all the answers on what is going to happen. Okay? But he's really been very enjoyable to listen to about some dealings. However, before Trump came in, he had some concerns and stuff. But now that Trump's in, he is anti-Trump. And I let him know it. I said, leave your bias at the door and give us some of the truth. And I let him know. I don't hear from these people. It's not like I have any kind of voice. But anyway, watch. These are quotes. I said, okay, let me make sure I'm quoting you. He says, the United States is actively assisting the Russians in the war. Okay, let's leave Trump aside for a minute. I know some people can't do that. They just can't do it. Nobody can just put him aside. So talk about Rubio. Talk about Pete Hegseth. Talk about some of these other wonderful people. I'm not saying they're Christians. I'm not saying they're your brother. I have no idea. But they have long histories of being constitutional and long histories of being lovers of America and the Constitution. All right? Do you think that they are helping Russia? Actively assisting. He doesn't just say that. Look, active collaboration. Do you think that we're collaborating? And that is a complete lie. These are lies. And so, yeah, I'm going to continue to watch him, but he's problematic now. He's on my list. It's a short list. It's a small, tiny. You can't, very small letters. You can't, You can't even see it. It doesn't even matter. Now, the U.S. Department of Defense, 3 American aircraft carriers are making their way to the Mediterranean. I think there's already one there, and 2 may be on the way. There is one for sure coming from the Pacific. So they're going to have a couple there. Now they've done this before, and everybody kind of goes, and even I go, well, here we go again. However, things are ramping up with Iran. There have been some flights, the Grumman, Northrop Grumman, those are the Navy flights, MQ-4, a spy plane basically. And they're off the shores of Iran. That's the nuclear site. And I want to remind you that right next to there, I'm not sure if that little island up there, see the little island up in the north? I'm not sure that's it. I think it's a little bit of a bigger island, but not far off the picture. It's called Karg Island. And that's where their huge gas transitioning port is, where at least 70% of their gas comes and goes from that island. And if they blew up that island, it would be a very, very bad deal for Iran. So anyway, we're watching, because Trump is trying to engage it with Iran and talk to them civilly, but he's lining up. Watch, he's lining up. Reports are coming in that while Iran lessened its intensity on military equipment and general support to the Houthis, they are still sending large levels of supplies. Iran must stop sending the supplies immediately. Let the Houthis fight it out themselves. So that will take Iran off the targets for a while. We'll see what happens. I just want to remind you, you see Yemen, the Houthis are in Yemen. They're a terrorist organization. They stop all the shipping that starts in the yellow area, the yellow line, the Red Sea route. They're stopping, unless you're a friend, like the Chinese, the Iranians. Egypt has lost billions, tens of billions of dollars. And even though they really hate Israel and they don't really like the United States, they're mad at Yemen, they're mad at the Houthis, but they haven't taken any kind of act against Yemen, the Houthis on this, which doesn't make sense because they're losing so much money. The ships have to go around. And Trump saying, listen, he's a businessman. This doesn't make sense. So we need to stop this. So they did. They went at it the other day. The United States went at it the other day. Then Lavrov said to Rubio, stop U.S. actions against the Houthi terrorists. And Rubio, what do you think he said? Well, I'll talk to the president. But under his breath, he's saying, that's not going to happen. You're dreaming. Because President Trump is walking heavily and carrying a very big stick. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by the Houthis, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen who are hated by the Yemeni people. True. One of the worst famines in the world right now is in Yemen because of this war. All emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack by the retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists. Now, I'm telling you, again, whether people like Trump or not, this is pragmatism and this is the facts. Everybody's known this. And for a president to come out and point the finger at a nation is the way it should be done. You are the problem, you know? And I love this kind of truth. The Syrian president, al-Julani, asked Putin to formally hand over Assad. I thought this is just an interesting note. That remember, the Syrian president who killed a bunch of people and was backed up by Russia, fled to Russia, and now he's hiding up there. And now he's an Alawite, and he's loved by the Sunnis, the Shias. The Sunni president is asking for Russia to give them Assad. And if Russia wants to make a deal with Syria, he's probably going to do it. But Russia might make Iran upset if they do. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm not going to show these videos. They're horrible. I am going to show one picture. It's going to be the closest of the horrid I will probably ever get. I think, Amir said something, President Trump said something, other people have said something that you know what, we're not going to show a bunch of stuff in public, but people really ought to watch some videos to get a sense of what happened on October 7th and what is happening in the world so that they can be sensitized, not watch it over and over and love it to be desensitized, but to be sensitized to what is happening on the planet. Christians, your brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. Now, these are not them. These are Hezbollah. Hezbollah is in Syria and Lebanon, okay? And these Hezbollah are under Iran, under Shia. They're Shiites. And because of what they did to the Sunni population in Syria, the Sunnis are taking it out on the land, on the borders of Lebanon. And they're killing Hezbollah. Bunches of them. And here's a bunch of them just laying alongside the road. So the rebels are mourning the green now. So the rebel. Let's call Hezbollah is Shia. The rebels are Sunni. Let's do that. The Sunnis are mourning their dead now because Hezbollah is killing more rebels when they get a chance. You see what's happening? Now you've almost got a civil war between Lebanon and Syria because of it's the religious war, and they absolutely hate each other. So Hezbollah attacks and has killed the rebels. So there's a tit for tat here going on. The rebels attack the Hezbollah again, and you can see where this is happening on the borders of Lebanon, north and south there. So Lebanon's Disaster Risk Management Unit, so we're in Lebanon, said about 13,000 Syrians fled across the borders to Lebanon since clashes and killings in the west. The green are killing Alawites and Christians. They are leaving and coming into Lebanon. They arrived and settled in about 23 different villages and towns in Lebanon's north, adding that most were living in family homes or makeshift accommodations. And Lebanon can't handle this kind of population. We'll see if it continues. Here's the UN. The Gutierrez says more than 2/3 of the Syrian people need humanitarian aid. Okay, this is after a decade and a half of destruction of the Syrian people. The UN is now saying we need to help the people of Syria. The rebels, the Sunnis, who are now slaughtering people. The Syrian economy has lost $800 billion in recent years. Okay, take it up with your presidents. European Commission President, we welcome the Syrian foreign minister's participation in the Brussels meeting. Now, it's at this point you and I need to make a decision in our brains. Who's suffering in Lebanon and Syria right now? Sunnis, Shia, Christians, and some others. Your Christians, brothers and sisters, and maybe some who will be saved, are suffering in these countries. And we need to remember them in prayer. We need to remember that in our own nation. We wish that some of these millions of Muslims that are here would become saved. And so there's that whole thing where the president has to walk around with this heavy load, this heavy stick, and make things right. But you and I need to continue to pray for many to be saved and when we have the opportunity to pray with them, give them the gospel, and all those kinds of things. But we never, and I just want to say this, we never want our president to stop what he's doing, because that's what the Lord said he should do in Romans chapter 12. He doesn't bear the sword for nothing. So we want him to do that. However, we still must be the church. And we got to remember that. We have brothers and sisters over there who are dying. Hezbollah militants crossed the border in Homs countryside, killing 3 Syrian soldiers. So there it goes. Statement from the MP Hezbollah. If the Lebanese army, so now this problem in Lebanon. If the Lebanese army does not receive Hezbollah's weapons, in other words, unarm Hezbollah, the Shias, the jihadists, the ones who want to kill Israel and the friends of Iran, if the Lebanese army doesn't unarm Hezbollah, this operation will be handed to the Israelis in the south, watch, and perhaps to the Syrians in the west. So Lebanon is in a crisis right now, and there is a whole load of Christians there, and they are caught in between all of this. And we just really need to pray for things. I don't think it goes well for Lebanon before the tribulation. I just simply don't. It's too far. It's too much ingrained in the north there, and Russia's going to be more involved, and Turkey's going to be more involved. The Christians are going to have to make a decision what they're going to do. The Hezbollah right now and the Shiites are a target. They want them wiped out, to be frank with you. We'll see how it goes. So Turkey in the north, citizens here condemn the massacre of families of 9 in a UAV attack in the Berksbatan village of Kobane, and called on an international institution and courts to stand against Turkey. A Turkish aircraft bombed a family working in agriculture south of Kobani. The airstrike, which struck the area between these two places, killed 9 members. That's the worst picture I'm ever going to show you. A security source said, fears are growing of a confrontation. See what's happening? Between Turkey and Israel in Syria. Because now Lebanon is saying, come help us. The Druze are saying, come help us. The Christians are probably saying, come help us. I'm wondering what the Kurds are doing still. There's really no definite reason, definite solution for what is happening with the Kurds right now. The leader of the Kurds, the SDF, the yellow, signed an agreement with the green. But the Kurdish leaders are saying, we weren't there, and we don't want to be a part of it. So we really honestly don't know where that is right now. The majority is saying we probably should lay down arms so we can live, but I don't think that works real well. The Turks hate the Kurds. We're just going to have to wait and play and see how this plays out. Here's another point. The more that this goes on, the more that Ezekiel is way off in the distance. Ezekiel 38 and 39 is nowhere close. You can see the allies kind of lined up, but Russia is not even in Syria anymore. And so Ezekiel 38 is not close. This is a good task force, I think. Task force on October 7th launched to find out what happened. The Trump administration did that. We'll see what happens. Is there a political shift in Israel? We're going to watch this. Here's a reporter, Mir Green. With all of my own critique of Netanyahu over the years, I believe his political moves and inactions were due to his understanding of how to accomplish whatever he could, knowing the deep state would stop him. And now, finally, he has the public understanding and the alternative media support to take on the deep state and finally make the changes necessary. And I would say he has the support of Trump. And so maybe he will come out of his shell. He is a right He's a conservative, but some of the, especially of the younger pro-Zionist, pro-temple people have saying he's not been conservative enough. He better come out of his shell pretty quick. We're going to see if this happens. Avi Bello, follow him on Facebook, Avi Bello. He's a wonderful Jewish man, not a believer, but he has some pretty good insights, as well as, of course, Amir Safadi on these things. Let's finish up here just a few minutes talking about Mr. Tucker. Mr. Tucker. Him and Candace Owens are on my short list. That one he can't read. They're on my list. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything. But they're on my list. He's become more and more anti-Semitic. He has his own program, making lots of money and lots of friends. Anyway, he had Witkoff on the other day. This is President Trump's hostage negotiator for the world. Peace negotiator between Russia and Ukraine, between Israel and Hamas. And he's getting engaged with, between Israel, well, I would say the United States and the Arab nations about the Abraham Accords. He's getting more and more engaged there, all right? So now, I'm not going to play his whole clip. It's an hour and a half long. He would leave and there would be no there wouldn't be any cookies left and we'd all be sad. I'd be sad because you left, not because of cookies. Anyway, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick a couple of comments that he made, and we're going to talk about some of these things before we wrap up, all right? Tucker says, in the last couple years, couple generations of diplomats, it's been, here's what we want, shut up and do it. And I don't think that's been very effective. And I need an editor. A very effective. Okay. I should do these enough time to give them to my wife so she can edit them. Anyway, she's really good at it. She's really good at it. But anyway. It's because I'm done 2 seconds before I walk in the door. All right. Now, has that been the way it's been? Militarily, we can kind of push our weight around. We have for the last 70 years, 80 years. We've kind of pushed our military weight around and telling some nations, don't step over the line. But there's not been a lot of times where we said, shut up and do what we tell you. And in fact, in the last couple generations, we've been appeasing the world. Oh, you want our money and tariffs? Take it. Oh, you want our military over there? Take them. You want us to guard you? Fix that? Do that? This is not true. Okay? And he's right about the last part. It hasn't helped. Now listen, we've had 70, 80 years of peace here and there. More civil wars than ever. We haven't had a world war. But it's kind of been effective to keep kind of a false lid on things. Until you have somebody like President Obama who comes in and unleashes all the stuff that's kind of hidden underneath. And then Trump comes in and unleashes all the kind of stuff that's been hidden in the hearts of people underneath. I believe that's what God has been doing. Because through the Reagan and through the Bush and through the Clinton and through the Carter eras, we've been like back and forth and yeah, I don't really like what you're thinking, but okay, you're the president. We just kind of go along. No really pushing and shoving around until we get to Obama, where he went over to the Arabs and say, we're your friends, we're your brothers, and the Israelites, and he belittles Netanyahu in the office. And then Netanyahu, I love that second time he came back and let Obama have it in the White House, and you can call that belligerent or not, but Netanyahu had had enough. That wasn't going to happen again. And Trump is kind of the same make here. He's saying, okay, enough of this. Enough. So that's the case, that now Trump is doing this. He's saying, when he said this, I'm thinking, you're not talking about Bush or Carter or Clinton to some. You're talking about, that's Trump. Do as I say or pay the price. Right or wrong, that's what he's doing. So Witkoff, who really likes Trump, he talked about him like he's his idol, and I wanted to be like him when I was all this stuff. And he really likes him. He said, I think they, the Palestinians and Hamas, want stability. I think they want a peace. No, I'm sorry. I think he's talking about Qatar. I'm sorry, Qatar. He's talking about Qatar. Qatar, I think they want stability. I think they want a peace treaty. I want to just again warn you that Qatar is on the outs with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and the Arab nations want a peace treaty. Qatar, some of them may, because it's going to be really good for them, and they don't want to be left out. However, they are so rich, they got one of probably the highest GDP in the world. They make so much money, and they've been giving it to jihadists. They've been giving it to the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are aligned with Turkey. They are very bad. Listen, again, we out here think, oh, wait a minute. I'm not smart. I'm not in the White House. I'm not part of the cabinet, but I'm not an idiot. I know who Qatar is. I've followed them for years. Who they are? They're friends with Muslim Brotherhood and Turkey, and they are a bad situation. And that's why Saudi Arabia doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Now they're trying to break down a little bit because they want to be in on the Abraham Accords for money and some of this, and actually to have access to kind of rural parts of the world. But they are very problematic. So, something else. Witkoff. There was some security lapses October 7th. We're not completely overwhelmed by AI now. We're human. He says, we didn't know everything because we didn't have AI. This is dangerous. And so the nations, and I'm telling you, Trump is going full bore. He's opening, intel agencies are, social media companies and those, they are building the plants. They're probably going to even talk about maybe even small nuclear plants to run some of this stuff. They're going to need so much energy to run this stuff. And doors are wide open for this, crypto, all those things we're going forward with under President Trump. Witkoff, Hamas can stay for a while, but they cannot rule. Okay, no, they can't stay for a while. That's what I would say. You can't even stay for a while. What's a while? You know? But anyway, he does say they cannot rule. Witkoff, Hamas is ideological and they're prepared to die. That's true. For a while, now, that's what we've thought. But what he's saying is that's not true. Watch. For a while, and a variety of reasons, I don't think they are as ideologically locked in and not ideological, intractable, in other words, controllable. I don't believe that. I never believed that, by the way. I believe they strap on a suicide vest on young kids who don't know what they are doing, and they tell them a story. What he's saying here is the leaders don't want to die. And that's probably the truth. However, they're prepared to die because they're martyrs. You got, Allah looking over them and all this, the 70 virgins and all this other kind of stupid stuff. But their ideology locks them in. I would say this, they're prepared to send their sons out first and then they die because they are dying. Have you seen the list of Hamas leaders that are dead? Over and over, just watch a mirror. They just put X's over all the faces. So they are prepared to die. I don't think they all want to die, but they're prepared to die. There's a difference. Under the ideology and under the pressure of jihadism, you got to be prepared to die. However, it's going to be my kids first. It was Golden Amir said, She doesn't like them so much for killing our sons. Something to the effect like, but why would they make us kill their sons? And so it's a demonic thing. Witkoff again. So what he is saying is this: the leaders really do want to live, and they will sacrifice everything and everyone but themselves. And I would say that's true to a point. At some point they will die. They are dying. Leaders are dying. However, that is in general a good point. Once you understand that, once you understand they want to live, then you are able to talk to them in a more effective way. There may be a little bit of a way to do that, but there's too many of the leaders to dying to say that's a general statement. I believe that when you're going to get them into such a space where they have no place to go, maybe they'll give up. But right now they've got too much money, too many food items going in, too many arms, too many people. They've got huge brigades still there. It's not feasible right now. So Qatar, they are a mediator here. By the way, they've mediated in Russia. That didn't go too well. They mediated in Afghanistan. That didn't go too well. They're good at it, he says. I disagree with him. Tucker, look at Tucker. God bless them. He must be, well, I'm not going to say. Mrs. Tucker he's off his rocker. Okay, Witkoff. How could I not collaborate with the mediator? He's collaborating with Qatar. This is problematic. Trump's Middle East envoy has prior ties to oil-rich nations there. Look at the bottom. The Park Lane Hotel in Manhattan was bought for approximately $654 million in 2013 by a joint venture led by Steve Witkoff and some others, and later sold to Qatar, and they lost $21 million. Now, that's not a good deal. That's not a good deal. That's 10 years, and they lost $10 million. That thing should have went up another $100 million. Anyway, this kind of stuff makes you go, not sure about that. Witkoff of Qatar. We would not be anywhere close to where we are today if Netanyahu did not decapitate Hezbollah. He decapitated Hezbollah and he decapitated Hamas. And in general, that's true. He's saying good things about Netanyahu. Of Trump, he does want to get the hostages out. That's what Trump wants. He wants to get the hostages out. And then they end with this. Tucker, this is smart. Smart. This is smart. Dealing with Qatar. Witkoff, Hamas cannot continue to exist here. So that's a good point to say. They didn't really get into the Palestinians leaving Gaza. They didn't really go over that. But I would suggest this. Witkoff is working for a man who wants peace. He's going to say some things to some people to get peace. He's going to work with some people he shouldn't be working with to get peace. We need to be careful about Witkoff in particular and who these people are, what are these people doing. And again, I don't have to put another flag up on Tucker. I hope you now have one. Witkoff, Hamas does the violence, and when we have had enough of it, Hamas cannot move on. We're talking now about demilitarization. I don't think anyone has a feeling that you can just kill off Hamas. It's an idea, right? That's what Hamas is all about. It's an ideological idea. But they cannot ever again ferment alongside any of the Muslim Brotherhood, alongside the Islamic Jihad. These are all groups operating inside of Gaza today. And I wish that I could talk to this guy, but I can't. Qatar funds Muslim Brotherhood. So how can he say this and then say, I have to collaborate with these people? See? This is unwise. I don't care how much money he has. That's unwise. Hamas's reaction to recent proposal was inappropriate. Inappropriate is a light word. So Hamas, do they want to die? I'm not sure they do. Concerning the Abraham Accords, many countries are on the verge of signing the agreement. So that's good news. Witkoff concerning Turkey, this is a big question mark over my head right now. an underreported conversation with Erdogan, really bad guy. There is some good news, positive news coming out of Turkey in the coming days. Okay, we'll wait for it. Meanwhile, Turkey, Erdogan puts his opposition member in prison, and the cities are protesting, and they have the rebels in the green killing Lebanese Alawites and Christians, and so we'll see what this good news is, but I'm very skeptical because I've read Ezekiel 38. So, all right, let's close up. Jeremiah 18, the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will let you hear my word. So I went down to the potter's house, and there he was working at his wheel, and the vessel he was making of clay was spoiled in the potter's hand, and he reworked it into another vessel as it seemed good to the potter to do. Then the word of the Lord came to me, O house of Israel. He's not talking to a person, he's talking to a nation. O house of Israel, can I not do with you, a nation, as this potter has done, declares the Lord. Behold, the clay in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, again, O house of Israel, the nation, the house of David. Verse 7, if at any time I declare concerning not a person, he can do the same thing with a person, but he's not talking about a person, he's talking about a nation, or a kingdom, that I will pluck up and break down and destroy it. And if that nation concerning which I have spoken turns from its evil, I will relent of the disaster that I tended to do to it. And if any time I declare concerning a nation or a kingdom that I build and plant it, and if it does evil in my sight, not listening to my voice, then I will relent of the good that I had intended to do to it. I say this. I think that the United States is at a turning point. I think it's put up or shut up. I think that we need to do good. Now, we are standing on the very, very good side with Israel right now. That's very good. I hear of a younger population that is searching for Jesus. That's very, very good. I hope it's the fact. I'm going to wait and see how that plays out. The Pew and Lifeway and Barna, their polls are not very positive. So we'll see what happens. But we're at a turning point, and if we don't start to get this right, I'm concerned. I am concerned. Luke 21. Watch yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and cares of this life, and that day come upon you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the whole earth. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. So guard your hearts. Guard your hearts. Lord, please help us guard our hearts. Holy Spirit, please live within us and be upon us at times. Empower us to do your work and your will. Help us to be very wise in all things. Forgive every single one of us of our sins, transgressions against you, our evil thoughts, whether they're intentional or unintentional, our hatred of our brother and our sister. Let us put those away, Lord God. So then we will recognize and we will experience your peace with us. You will be at peace with us and us with you. And then we can live that life that you've given to us. We thank you for the opportunity to do it. We worship you in Jesus' precious name. Amen.